I really appreciate the introduction. Scott is a dear friend and has been a lifelong friend. Seth, I've gotten to know and really appreciate the invitation to be here. I am sorry to disappoint you. I see all of the young women, the fine young women here, and I understood that this was to be the Women's Tech Lecture Series. Is that correct? So I'm slightly disappointed myself that this isn't just all women here. But I'm grateful for all you fine young men that have joined us today, and really appreciate those that are joining us for a second time. I see some familiar faces here that I've spoken to and have gotten acquainted to throughout the years in working in entrepreneurship. So listen, it's very likely that none of you have ever heard of me, and I'm completely fine with that. But I want you to understand just a little bit about the road that has taken us to where we are right now. You have certainly within this seminar series and class witnessed some great entrepreneurs, and some of those have been great heroes of mine, and I've been able to follow in their paths. Hopefully there's some things that I can share today that'll be helpful to you. But let me first ask you this question. How many of you, by raise of hands, would say that you are aspiring entrepreneurs? Great. So can I ask you a question, my friend from the first row? That my goal was to get 2 words out, or 1 word out of her, and I got 2, so I feel pretty lucky. We're going to get some more right now. What kind of entrepreneurship are you interested in?
I'm going into the retail business and selling clothing.
I can see that. You hold up your sketch.
I'd rather not.
Are you sure? Can I hold it up?
I can put one that's finished.
Okay, sure. We're going to see a finished sketch. Great. That's passion right there. That's passion every waking moment. When it's not solitaire or having to come to a mandatory lecture series, right? That's passion. And that's what she's filling it in. And I want to talk to you a little bit about passion. Thank you. And that's way more than just 1 word. So can we give her a round of applause for sharing? Thank you. Really appreciate that. I want to talk to you about my passion for what I do today, what I've done, over the last 15 years as an entrepreneur, and maybe answer some questions along the lines. I know that we have a dedicated question and answer period that starts off, sort of as the class ends. But for those of you that need to go, and if you have any questions throughout what I hope is a discussion, I would love for you to raise your hand. I would love to answer the questions because I want to make this pertinent to you, to this group, to what's taking place now in your lives, and as you're aspiring towards your own entrepreneurial pursuits, to discuss something that is important and meaningful and topical today. So hopefully we can touch on some things that have been meaningful to me, that have helped us achieve a certain level of success and to build organizations. As I had mentioned, most of you probably don't know this business, ClearLink, and the name comes from my wife's maiden name, which is Earl. You can see that right in the middle. My last name, Clarke. You put them together. Hence my lack of creativity. I couldn't be drawing beautiful retail objects like that. So due to my lack of creativity, put the 2 together. That's ClearLink. But I'm going to answer one of the questions that Scott and Seth gave to me. It's what didn't you know that you later learned that became crucial to your success? Well, what didn't I know? I didn't know that I could fail. I just didn't think failure was an option. I didn't think that was something that I would do. I didn't know that it was in my DNA. But I've since learned that failure is in my DNA. And I can fail. But what we've learned is also to fail fast. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. This business took place in the worst possible time. We started it 6 weeks after 9/11. Do any of you remember that as kids, what was going on during 9/11? Do you also remember what was taking place on Wall Street? Capital markets were completely dry. So nobody was investing. There was no money to invest, especially if you had 3 little letters after the name of your business. What are those 3 little letters? Yeah, so C-O-M, right? .com. So if you had a .com or an online business, nobody believed in online retail any longer. They'd had these crazy valuations based on eyeballs, not on revenues or earnings, right? Nobody believed in it. But I'm jumping, feet first into this business. There would be an online retail business focused on that. Pretty silly, right, as you think about it. It's also in the basement of my then fiance's home that I'm starting this off. I actually had to buy my way out of my first business. I couldn't just even walk away. There were debts and obligations left that I had to write a check for to pay my way out so that I could leave free and clear. Sound like an exciting time to start a new business? To try entrepreneurship once again? Not very exciting, but I believed in what we would be doing because my first business was one of the summer sales companies. We were the first company that was selling satellite dishes door to door. Woo, right? A great thing, but don't underrate sales. It's what taught us what we could do here in this business. So it was a great experience for me, but having to buy my way out of a business was not terribly exciting. So we wrote the check, hoping that there would be some residuals or something that would come through that business and pay us back. Well, they didn't. Not only that, but the business that I bought myself out of decided to compete against ClearLink when ClearLink then became a company of viable size. So we had issues and we had problems, but we also had opportunity. And the opportunity that we saw was that sort of brought this idea to the surface was I had a relationship with this company right here, Dish Network. By virtue of my former business, I had a relationship with DirecTV, and there were a few online retailers that were actually doing really well. But they had awful technology and awful websites. If you saw the websites the way they looked then, you would laugh compared to the way that websites are set up today. You would laugh. But I wasn't laughing at the revenues that they were generating. They were generating great revenues, and they were wonderful businesses. So my thesis was internally, if they can generate those kinds of revenues, multi-million-dollar revenues, based on a website that looks like that, what could I do if we produced a website that looked fantastic and was functional and easy and had the great site ergonomics that wonderful sites do? Well, the only problem with that is I had never built an online business before. For those of you in this room that are computer science majors or ISIS majors that make a living or plan to make a living developing code, I still today could not write a line of code to save my life. So I didn't know a thing about it. And I went to the first web shop that I went to and proposed the idea. And yeah, we can do this for X number of dollars. We put down 50% up front, and guess what? Just weeks later, they were out of business. So we went to the next shop a little more carefully, and we put down less money this time and really negotiated hard, and guess what? They went out of business also. A year into this, we still have no partnership and no technology. And again, I'm not the guy who's going to develop code. I had just spent, in my last business, 2 years trying to figure out a basic accounting. I didn't go to the Marriott School, by the way. I studied geography and political science here at BYU. So I had 3 partners that all did the same kind of thing. I had to figure out how to do something else, and that was accounting. I knew that was not going to be within my set of capabilities. So what we did find is, luckily, we ran into a group called Odyssey Web on a fluke and figured out how to align our interests. And I want you to remember that. The alignment of interests is what was key for us in building this business, because it wasn't us writing a check. We give you a check, you build the site. No. We had learned our lesson. There was no more money that we could even spend to have a site built. We had to sell them on the same thing that we currently believed or then believed, and that was, if you do X, both you succeed and we succeed. So we put together a revenue share model, so a rev share with Odyssey Web, and quickly, as soon as it had launched, literally the day that it went live, we were profitable. We were cash flow positive from the day that it went live. But it took us a year and a half to get there. Slow going? Yeah. But we knew what our model was, and it was solid. And I remember writing down on this little piece of paper and my goals. I mean, this wasn't an Excel fancy spreadsheet. This was my little piece of paper which read, you need to sell 13 of these Dish Network or DirecTV units on a daily basis to be profitable. And then I put together certain metrics on if we did this and this and this and this. And let me talk to you about how that went. But it all started with alignment. So this is ClearLink a few years later. It only took us 10 years to become an overnight success. But the good news about this was, because it was slow going and because we put together a rev share model where we had a true partner and their interests were our interests, guess what? As we grew, we didn't have to take on outside capital. We bootstrapped, and luckily I had a then bride, now we were married, and she believed in it enough that she took what we called her mattress money. She had a great job. Anybody know what OxyContin is? Yeah. Hopefully not too much. Hopefully you don't know that too well. She was the #1 seller of OxyContin in the U.S. Legally, I have to tell you, right? So she legally sold this, and so she had a great income, and luckily she believed in me, not only enough to marry me, but to invest in it. And so we didn't have to go out for outside investors. And it was the best case scenario for us. It could have been awful if we had lost her life savings and everything that she had worked to build. But it was a wonderful blessing to us as a family to be able to bootstrap this. So as you fast forward through a company that then becomes a success, you're able to reap some of those rewards, and some of those rewards, again, are generated through that key word, that alignment that took place. I was aligned with my spouse, we were aligned with our partners, then we became aligned with our brands. And really the thought, and what ClearLink is and was then, was a business that online generated customers for brands of household services. So for example, Dish Network, DirecTV, AT&T Alarm Services, CenturyLink Internet or phone services, Verizon, and about 30 other brands that we did that for. So anything you paid a bill for within your home. We sold those products, but they didn't pay us to do that. We created our own marketing platforms. We ran ultimately about 50,000 unique URLs, 50,000 websites that were out there, all of them unique. And then we would generate a sale, we would hand that over to the brand on a silver platter, and they would pass us back a bounty or a commission with a recurring monthly revenue component to that. So we were taking a risk on this, showing them that we could actually sell something, but it was nice because it was a variable cost model. So we had variable costs baked into the business where we were only paying for what we got, and of course they were only paying for the sales that were generated to them. So we didn't hear the word no very often at all. Because you come to a brand and say, we'll protect your brand, we do this for other brands, and we will generate sales for you. That's a pretty nice prospect, and we didn't hear no very often, if at all, because they wanted the sales. And if we were able to protect their brand and generate marketing and awareness and protect their sales channels, we would do a good job. This is what ClearLink looked like, and I'm going to fast forward for just a second, when about the time that we sold. So it was on the Inc. 500 list for the 6th consecutive year. It's named one of the best companies in Utah to work for. It's about the 15th largest employer in the state of Utah that's a privately held company. And we were generating about 1 million new subscribers or customers, which would in turn then generate billions of dollars of revenues for these brands. Sounds like a real business, right? But a real business that very few of you, I'm sure, would ever hear about or know about. That's what ClearLink was. And that's what I want to expose you to today as entrepreneurs, is it doesn't have to be the dare I say, the most illustrious brand that you're familiar with or see or know. It doesn't have to be Chevrolet that you sit down in as you drive your car away. It doesn't have to be an Apple computer. It doesn't have to be Nike shoes to make a living. You don't have to build something that everybody is simply aware of. We did this and built this company simply by leveraging others' brands and leveraging our own talents. And so while most of you wouldn't know what ClearLink is, I would argue most of your families have at least bought something through ClearLink. So it's of the subscriber base that we built, that's how you go from sort of zero. This is the sort of case study of how a young, dumb entrepreneur builds something from zero to a couple thousand employees. Now let me back up for just 1 second. So just to give you a sense of ClearLink, and as we were building this, I had brought in these partners with Odyssey Web that I talked to you a little bit about. Their CEO is a great person, and I knew that I wanted to go do other things, kind of like what I'm doing right now. And in 2008, we thought we were going to sell the business. We had offers on the table. We had an investment banker that had put this all together for us. We thought our ship had come in, but 2008 happened. And what took place in fall of 2008? The world fell apart. And you can see the sign of Lehman Brothers. Actually, this is the auctioneers, by the way. This just 6 months ago. this Lehman Brothers sign was sold. I don't know who would buy it or who wanted to buy it, but somebody bought it for tens of thousands of dollars just for the memorabilia. 2008 happened, but I had hired a CEO. I had worked myself out of a job, put somebody in there to run the company for me so that I wouldn't have the traditional golden handcuffs that a CEO has when they sell a company. Thought I'm going to sell and I'll move on to my next venture. Well, what it did is it gave me a gift. 2008 gave me a gift to think about what I would do next. So I had already been to BYU. I had done my time at Harvard Business School, finished up there in 2007. What am I going to do with these next 2 years from 2008 and beyond? Well, what I did is I set up an office right there next to these guys on Wall Street, where they used to be, I guess, and went through many different sort of opportunities, looked at them and thought, you know, will it be this or this or this? And figured out what our next step would be in sort of my career and what I could do leveraging our talents. When I then figured out that it would be something like what we do now, and it is focused on this sort of growth equity model. I'm going to skip through this really quickly because we've got a few more things to talk about. This is what we figured out, that in the investor market space, as you as entrepreneurs are looking for capital, there's sort of 4 phases, we would argue. So there's your friends and family, rich aunt or uncle, mother and dad, or your credit cards that will help you sort of get from here to here. So that's your first phase, or your angel investors, right? And then you've got traditional sort of venture capital. There are a lot of these players, and most of those, if not all, all of those are regional players that are based in Salt Lake City. Okay? Nothing wrong with that. They're in Salt Lake City. On this other side, you've got private equity. So it's important to distinguish. So you've got angel, we talked about, venture capital, which is very early stage, low sort of incremental sort of allocations. And then you've got, you know, groups like Huntsman Gay or Solomare or Sorensen Capital. These are true private equity players that are allocating to businesses that are doing at least $10 million of earnings or above. So these are real businesses, much like, as many of you know, some of the transactions that took place in the last year or two here in this valley of companies like Vivint that see a $2 billion valuation. That's a private equity deal. That's another investor coming in and either doing a management recapitalization, putting money in people's pockets, or investing more in that business to grow. When Ancestry.com was purchased for $1.whatever billion and taken private, that's a private equity deal. So you've got these large players that are doing these private equity deals. You've got these early stage venture players. They all happen to be outside of this valley. Does anybody think that there's something wrong with that? Because I do. And that's why when we sold our business, and I had spent time on Wall Street, we decided that we were going to focus smack dab on this little piece right here, growth equity. Not only were we going to focus on businesses that had become profitable, and I as an entrepreneur will always argue that that most difficult spot in any business is from idea and conception of that idea to $1 million of earnings. Not revenue, real profit, $1 million of profit. If you can do that, you've got a real business that, as Professor Nathan Furr would say, you can nail it and scale it. And we talk a lot about that in our businesses. If you can nail that down, and if you can get to $1 million of earnings, the rest is easy. The rest is scaling. The rest is putting fuel in the tank and having access to capital and adding some sophistication and other things. But you do that when you've got a good partner. And we hope that we are that partner. And not only was it, we're going to look after this growth equity place, we're going to look for businesses that happen to be here in what we believe is the most exciting geography in the state of Utah, if not in the entire Mountain West region. So I moved my family to Provo from Salt Lake, where we built our business, built all of our contacts, dropped everything, and came to Provo, Utah, looking at the opportunities. So if you look back over the last 25 years, let's say, of tech, so this is a tech forum, we're talking about things in technology, I would argue that the vast majority of all large and exciting tech deals that took place in the state of Utah, the vast majority took place right here in this county. So why is it that there are such large private equity players in Salt Lake City, or nice early stage venture players, and none of them have a presence here in this valley. It's not pejorative or disparaging to say that. I just wonder. I ask the question. Well, we answered that, and we answered that deep in a way that said, we want to be right here, where the exciting things are taking place within Utah County, right here in Provo. You've got this great body of entrepreneurs and budding entrepreneurs like are here in this room, and then you've got the ability to go execute. So you've got this great sort of human capital story, and then you've got these great entrepreneurs that are out there making things happen. What they don't have is what you see in the Silicon Valley or what you see on Wall Street. They don't have access to capital. So our goal was to move to a geography that we were really excited about and provide access to capital for businesses that were profitable. We're not great, and I figured that out pretty quickly as an entrepreneur because at picking the winners, because we're not. I guess every entrepreneur thinks that every other entrepreneur is going to work as hard as they do and care as much as they do and on and on and on, but it's just not the same. So you've got this great talent pool here in Provo. You've got these great ideas. You've got these great executors, but you don't have access to capital. That was what we decided that we would do here in Provo. And we've seen some fun success. I want to tell you a little bit about some of those successes. I want to tell you about the second allocation that we made. So I look at my job right now not as, sort of investor only. I look at myself as someone who is still this tech entrepreneur who's learned a thing or two about some other businesses, but and I would say that we are an operator first, CEO first, investor second. Very different than what we see with a lot of these other partners, that they're investors. Most of these guys at these firms, and again, it's not pejorative to say that they've not ever run their own P&L or their own balance sheet or been CEO of their own company. They've worked on Wall Street and they've run other people's money, and that's great. And they're very good sort of bankers and great at maneuvering dollars and investing wisely. But they don't know what it means to run their own businesses or their own P&Ls. And so I want to talk to you about that really quick. What we do is operators first, investors second. So if you recognize the man on the top, he's the same as the man on the bottom. We came into contact with one business. It was two entrepreneurs. The first entrepreneur had been the COO of the Jack Nicklaus companies. He took those companies private as a struggling publicly traded company. Was on the road for maybe 6 months doing that. So it was a favor. Jack made him his only business partner that he had ever had. Pretty big favor. So he saw business at the highest levels, was a great operator. His partner was the CEO of Polaroid. Who's heard of Polaroid? Great business. You take the little shop, but they had their struggles. He bought a license out of Polaroid after their bankruptcy, grew it to almost $1 billion of sales in 2.5 years. Does that sound like a pretty good operator to you? Good operator, two great operators. The only problem with these guys is they came to me and they had this bright idea that they were going to go out and sell baby products and pet products. Does that make a whole lot of sense to you? Golf guy and a consumer electronics guy wants to sell baby products and pet products? Well, listen, they had gone back to their retail partners, and they only went back because they needed to. And this is what I found out as we were doing our diligence. Both of these operators had lost everything. Would you invest in two people that have lost everything? Would you have invested in two people that had lost a collective $100 million fortune? I don't know. So that's the question I was asking myself. After 4 meetings, we got to a place where we felt comfortable, where we would invest in them. And here's why. Because they went back to their retail partners, Walmart, Sam's, Costco, Kroger, et cetera, and asked them, what are the 2 categories within your stores that are growing post-recession, right? So the Great Recession starting in 2008. What categories in your stores grew? And they said, babies and pets. Well, we invested. And the pet business took off. And that's a business that I'll show you with these 2 great operators that we took a chance on because they had something that we love to talk about in our firm, and that's scar tissue. They had scar tissue. Have you ever lost $100 million? I've missed out on $100 million opportunities, but I haven't lost $100 million. These guys had. I actually loved it, and it worked in their favor, and I'll show you what they did. So They started their business. Pets takes off. Who knows who this gentleman is? Who's that? That's right. That's right. This is Tom Stenberg, founder of Staples. Calls me. We're in the middle of a $27 million raise for this business. We had already placed just over $12 million, our firm alone. We believed in it. We went to Wall Street to see if we could raise money. Had a commitment for $27 million. We're ready to finalize that deal. I get a call from Tom. Tom said, "Hi, James. This is Tom." I said, "Hi, Tom." He said, "No, but this is Tom Stenberg wanting a little bit more from me and a little bit more respect maybe." And I said, "Great, good to talk to you, Tom." And he said, "We would like to invest in your pet business." I said, "That is fantastic. The only problem is we have our capital committed, and we're closing next week." You know what he said? He said, "I'd like to put $10 million in, and no problem." And he closed. And if you don't know how rare that is for somebody to put money in and be able to put $10 million in and close the following week, pretty rare, especially after, if you know, we spent about 5 months, almost 6 months, raising that first $27 million. A week later, because of the caliber of the business, he wants to place $10 million. And we were honored to take it. Why? Because he's on the board of this company. Who knows what company this is? Lululemon. If you don't know it, you will. And if you don't know why they're so valuable, go in their store and look at how much they're selling their jogging pants for. There's nothing that's less than 3 digits, generally. Is that true? Those of you that know Lululemon? My wife bought me my first Lululemon jacket. I asked her to take it back because it was a $150 sweat jacket. Yeah, that's how you create brands. That's how you create categories. A business that was nearly the size of the Gap, and something that only a handful of you are aware of. It speaks to a different demographic, but they know how to build a business. And PetSmart, the largest stakeholder in PetSmart. Is that a good strategic stakeholder in your business? Yeah, that's someone who you want as your partner. Those are the kinds of calls that you want to pick up. And ultimately, that business went on to raise just over $100 million. I think that's inaccurate. It was about $150 million, both debt and equity. Our firm, participated in each one of those raises, and we're still the largest single stakeholder in that business. We're thrilled about that because that's a business that went from, in 2010 when we met them, these 2 operators with scar tissue that not many of us in this room would agree to invest in or vote with our dollars to make this business happen. The next year they did almost $40 million of revenue. It was their first real full year of business. $40 million, that's a pretty great little year. Second year, nearly $100 million, at $88 million of revenue. Jack Nicklaus is the spokesperson, and then raised that first 132 debt and equity. Last year, nearly $200 million of sales, and they just continue to grow, and they'll double and double and double again. That this year is a bona fide billion-dollar business. You base that on, those businesses trade at 3 to 4 times revenue. It's a bona fide billion-dollar business. Were we wise in taking a bet on 2 entrepreneurs that had lost $100 million? I don't know. I think so. We haven't received all of our capital back. We hope that it ends up being that billion-dollar business. But one thing that we know is that we bet on operators that know how to run businesses. So as budding entrepreneurs, it's nice to have the idea. It's nice to have the model. And you talk about the business plan and business model competitions here at BYU and elsewhere. It's about execution. Because we hear 2 ideas or 2 businesses every day that come through our office. And it is about what these guys do and their ability to execute. I want to tell you again about how special this area is right here. So you can see these are the tech startup companies that have come from university. University of Utah is on top. Well, there's a good reason for that. The budget at the University of Utah that they receive for their tech startups is 10 times the size of the budget that is received here at this university. So do we do a lot with very little at this university? Yes, we do, absolutely. And we're really fortunate. Your number 2 is MIT. So University of Utah has a budget of about $300 million to develop these tech startups. MIT's budget, any ideas? It's a 10-figure number. It's a billion plus. Okay, so they're 3 times and only one tech company below Utah. And then BYU, so you guys know the answer to BYU is then you math majors or accounting majors, right? What's the BYU budget? $30 million. So at $30 million, that's the result above Cornell and Columbia, Johns Hopkins, Caltech, and others. That's a great key piece of information, or a KPI, we could call that, giving an indicator of what is taking place here on this university. Is powerful to look at. Another portfolio company of ours. This is one of those that we bought as a technology out of a university. So a great group of scientists, 6 of them put together what is an antimicrobial peptide. And basically what they had created was, have any of you seen the film Contagion? You ever seen that? Did it scare you like it scared me? Yeah. So the anti-contagion to a contagion-style bacteria that would enter into your body. So imagine for a second, if you've got something that will kill heavy-duty bacteria and superbugs, and it's a real issue, and I think that's part of why this film comes out and brings that issue to light, right? We just happen to find these scientists that are pretty interested in solving that problem. Well, you know what they did is they figured out that they needed to both kill and disperse bacteria. And I won't get into all the science, but the interesting part to us was they could do it on a very limited budget. They had great tech behind them, and we could then leverage our operational expertise to help them. So operators first, investors second. Put in a small amount of dollars, and in our first board meeting, after bringing in people as you would recognize, Fraser Bullock, who's the CEO of Sorensen Capital, was the number 2 guy at the Salt Lake City Olympics, was Mitt Romney's partner at Bain. And then you've, of course, got Michael Levitt. Doesn't ever hurt to have the former head of the EPA or former secretary in Bush's cabinet that headed the Health and Human Services Department. These are the right guys you want if you're trying to solve the world's health problems. But when a guy like, or gentlemen like these sit in a room and you're at your first board meeting and they say things like, if someone offered you $500 million to sell that business tomorrow, do not sell it. Those are good indicators that you've got a pretty good business. And that's what you want to do, is build a business that's got tremendous value that you can lock a gate behind. And part of our operational expertise is we can do a lot with very little. And to date, a company that's less than a year old, we have nearly 100 novel compounds in that business and nearly 10 patented compounds. It's pretty interesting when you can align people's interests towards one thing, that it's not about a dollar, it's about a cause, or it's about a goal. And that's what they're doing. And we have great benchmarks of other businesses that are roughly that size or even smaller that are seeing great valuations in the mid 9-figure and up to 10-figure range. So we're really excited about those types of business. Again, it's only because we align our interests internally that we're able to do that. So let me just back up and go to our first allocation. This is a company called Contour. You may not know this business. You probably don't, but you probably know a company called GoPro, right? If you watch the X game, I heard some laughs back there. Yeah, thumbs up, right? We were involved in this business. It was our first allocation after I had sold my business, ClearLink. Allocated dollars. We were the single largest stakeholder in that business also. But guess what? Even though we were virtually the same size as GoPro and we were the first 1080p camera, it was a slender design, it was rough and tumble, all of the magazines, Wired, Gizmodo, all of those rated it above a GoPro. Guess what? None of you have probably ever heard of it. And that's the problem. So they were these great tech sort of builders, great technologists. They'd build the best camera, the best widget for people to see, but no one virtually knew about it except for the extreme enthusiasts. And that business drove itself over a cliff. And it was August of this past year, 2013, we did another 7-figure placement for my office. And just weeks later, I got a call saying, if you don't place another 7-figure number in this business, it's over. What would you do? I heard that was audible. That was an audible response. What would you do? So I love that, and thank you for the vote of confidence, that it's the best camera for the best athlete is what he's saying. So thank you. It's a very nice vote of confidence. But the key to what you're saying back there is getting the word out. So it's not enough that you spend $30 million in building the technology or your 8th generation camera, and I think GoPro's maybe on their 4th or 5th. So you're way above in technology, but who cares if nobody knows about it, right? Who cares? Clearly, not enough know even about it in this room to even care, right? Well, this is what we decided to do. We let it run itself off a cliff. We didn't write that second 7-figure check to protect it. We let them run it right into the ground, and they did. And over the course of the next 2 months, we watched it go through receivership, and we sat down at a big boardroom table in Seattle, Washington, and we bid to buy the company that we had once loved and believed in and thought it was worth saving, but only worth saving at a certain price. And we bid against companies like Polaroid, like Sony, that were at the table and wanted to buy this business. And we won the bid. And our strategy was this, that we would put $5 million on the balance sheet. We would eliminate, they had $7 million of debt, completely wiped away through the receivership process. Is it a better company now? Net down 7, up 5. I'd take the up 5 all day long. So we both bought it and then put $5 million on the balance sheet. We brought in a new CEO. You see where that CEO is from? Well, a company called Apple that has $150 billion on their balance sheet. They know how to run a good business, and this person actually ran 75% of their consumer electronics channel. Does he know how to sell product? You better believe it. He's in Germany right now at a trade show selling product globally. He's the right guy. A whole new product coming out that keeps with that form factor in the beginning of this year. Another one that comes out at the end of this year, and then some world-class marketing with world-class agencies behind that. Strategic partnerships. Walmart is a partner in this. And then on and on and on, building on this business. And we're really excited about what that has in store. But the jury is still out. But I bring that up only to say nothing is ever perfect for us. You might hear some of these stories and think, oh, Golden Touch, and you guys do X or Y or Z. The reality is it's all about our ability to execute and be scrappy, to get our fingers and our hands dirty and help these entrepreneurs and help these brands at times to operate and execute and do the things that don't sound very sexy when you're talking about them, but that's what this is about. When a guy like Todd Peterson or Josh James comes and stands before you the next time you hear those guys, it'll be about operations. Yeah, a lot of us got lucky in what we're doing, but to be able to repeat that over and over, it's about the ability to execute and ability to execute at the highest levels, even when things don't go your way. So this is the firm, and these are some of the things that we're involved in. Let me just talk to you about 4 powerful principles as we're wrapping up. We have a couple minutes, and then we'll take a break. The first I want to talk about is a principle that we live by every day, and believe me, we fail all the time. But the key to our failure, I believe, is that we fail fast. If you're going to fail, figure out that you're going to fail, and fail fast so you can pivot again onto what would be a successful model, a successful business, a successful marital relationship, whatever that is in your life, fail fast if you're going to fail. Listen, are we advocates of failure? No, we don't like to fail. But if you are going to fail in something, fail fast. Make the failure de minimis. Minimize the failure versus some great and horrible failure that you prolong your agony, and finally, years and years later, it's this massive failure. Because even our bodies, and probably even, and I can talk this way amongst this group, sometimes even our spirits will probably only have certain capacity to fail to a certain degree, right? Fail fast so that you can move on to that success that's in each one of your futures, in ours as well. Second is, really sad story. It was a board that I was a part of for years and years. Loved this business from day one. It was really exciting to look at it. There was one business out there that was selling, drugstore.com. They were selling online pharmaceuticals and just regular sort of over-the-counter meds that you would see, or Band-Aids and toothbrushes and all kinds of things. Great business model, good operators, but guess what they never did? They never took the leap. They never took the leap and actually crossed the chasm from one side to another. They never launched the website. They never figured out if the customer wanted what they had to offer or not. And consequently, they lost. While they were trying to figure it all out and not launching and not crossing the chasm, Amazon came in, and not only was the battle won, but the war was won. And drugstore doesn't have a chance, let alone a company that was a startup like this. So they had all the goodness of a wonderful startup company, but wouldn't cross the chasm. Jump across and figure out what's on the other side, because that's the only way you're going to figure out what's successful. Nail it and scale it. We talked a little bit about that. Having the ability to do something well and then ramping it up. And you can talk to Professor Furr about that. We admire him for that, and we talk about it in our businesses all the time. Nail it, scale it. Last one I want to talk to you about is labore et honore, which is Latin for labor and honor. When I was a little boy, I started working for my dad. I'm from rural southern Idaho. And every week as I worked for him, 3 hours a day doing various jobs around the house, around the farm. And by the way, when I say rural Idaho, I was supposedly lived in the city. It was the city of Rexburg, which means I was exactly 1 block away from where the farms were, right? So not exactly metropolitan. Worked every week. He would write me a check, and I think those averaged about $1.33 an hour that I was making as a little boy. In the memo section, he would write either labor, if I had not done a very good job, if it was just the work, or labor and honor, this that reads on my Clarke family crest. My hope is that as we're talking about all of this, as you talk about nail it and scale it, and alignment, and working as an operator and someone who can execute, that all of this is done as a representative of this university, of what you believe, and what you know to be true, that you'll have labor and honor in all that you do. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.